from stories across the world to stories here at home. This is the National News Broadcast. A very good evening to you. I'm Nitya Delavera.
Good evening, I'm Lakshita Singha, and to start off, we take a quick look at the headlines.
A decision to increase the number of PCR tests in the country. Another group of Ukraine tourists arrive into the country. 200,000 self-employment opportunities to uplift the rural economy. Vari Saubhagya program to construct 14,000 tanks was commenced today. Sri Pada pilgrimage season commences adhering to health protective guidelines. New variant of COVID first identified in the United Kingdom has now been confirmed in over 20 countries in the world.
Now, in your top story this evening, today is Unduap Full Moon Poya Day, which records many important events in the history of Buddha Sasana. Now, in this connection, numerous religious programs were organized in Viharasthanas throughout the island. On this day, 11 bhikkhunis headed by Arahat Mahasanghamita Therani arrived in the island carrying the southern branch of the Jayasri Ma sapling. The historical incident paved the way for the establishment of the Bhikkhuni Sasana in Sri Lanka. With this memorable and meritorious event, people of the era inherited national and religious freedom never experienced in the past. The Sri Lankan visit of Mahasanghamita Theraniya was the outcome of a request made by King Devanampiya Tissa from Emperor Dharmashoka. Following the visit, many religious and social transformations took place. The 205th Dhamma sermon under the Amadam Sisilasa Dhamma sermon series was conducted at the Prime Minister's official residence in Vijayarama Road, Colombo 7 today. It was held with participation of Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa. Blessings were invoked for the well-being of citizens amidst the COVID-19 outbreak. A Dhamma sermon was delivered by Chief Incumbent of Gangarama Temple, Venerable Dr. Kirinde Asaji Thera.
පින් කරපුවාම මොනවාද ලැබෙන්නේ? ආයු වර්ණ සැප බල ප්‍රඥා ගුණය වඩා වර්ධනය කරගන්නට වැඩි වැඩියෙන් පින් දහම් කරන එක.
The Sri Pada pilgrimage season commenced today. It was commenced in accordance to quarantine guidelines. The procession carrying the casket of relic statue of God Saman and jewellery of the deities reached the Sri Pada Dhamma Centre in Nallathania last evening. The casket of relics and the jewellery of the deities were placed at the Sri Pada Sthana at the auspicious time this morning following the cleaning of the sacred Sri Pada Padmaya. Police media spokesman DIG Ajit Rohana said that pilgrims should strictly adhere to health guidelines during pilgrimage this year. Sri Lanka Rupavahini Corporation conducted the live telecast of the Saddharma Varsha Poya Day program today. It was organized at the corporation premises. The program consisted of several Dhamma sermons and Dhamma discussions.
The epidemiology unit says the number of COVID-19 recoveries in the country has increased up to 33,925. Another 704 COVID-19 recoveries were reported in the country today. 51 fully recovered COVID-19 patients who were receiving treatments at the COVID-19 treatment centers in Polonnaruwa district were discharged today. 49 recovered COVID-19 patients who were receiving treatments at the COVID-19 treatment centers in Kegol were discharged today, according to Kegol District Health Services Director Dr. Kumara Wickramasinghe. A total of 33,925 COVID-19 recoveries have been reported in the country since the beginning of this month until today. The highest number of COVID-19 recoveries recorded in a day was reported on the 16th of December. Accordingly, 785 recoveries were reported on that day. Meanwhile, a total of 704 COVID-19 recoveries were reported today. The percentage of recovered COVID-19 patients in the country is at 80.67, taking the tally to 33,925. The percentage of active patients in the country is at 18.87, with the tally at 7,937. Meanwhile, another 453 COVID-19 patients were identified in the island today. Out of this total, 418 have been identified as close associates of the patients in the Paliagoda cluster. The remaining 35 patients have been identified as those connected to the prison cluster. A total of 12,236 PCR tests were conducted yesterday. The total number of PCR tests conducted so far is at 1,228,868. Sri Lanka Army Commander General Shavindra Silva said that all necessary steps have been taken to avert the transmission of the new variant of the COVID-19 first reported in the United Kingdom into the country. A decision has been reached to increase the number of PCR tests carried out in the country on a daily basis in order to identify COVID-19 patients. Minister Prasanna Ranatunga has said that this decision was taken to expedite the process to repatriate Sri Lankans stranded in foreign countries and to ensure that the inbound foreign tourists are not COVID-19 patients. The decision was reached during a discussion held at the Ministry of Tourism today with the participation of Minister Prasanna Ranatunga. The ministry is expecting to resume commercial flight operations at the end of next month following the reopening of the airports. Accordingly, the minister pointed out the importance in increasing the number of PCR tests conducted in the country. Furthermore, the number of PCR tests conducted on Sri Lankans living abroad and tourists arriving into the country will be increased by 3,000 tests. The minister pointed out that the priority should be given for the Sri Lankans living abroad under the process. The minister also said that the government's aspiration is to repatriate Sri Lankans who are currently abroad and to uplift the tourism industry. Meanwhile, another group of Ukraine national tourists arrived to the Rajapaksa International Airport in Mattala today from Kyiv, while adhering to health guidelines. 204 tourists and 6 flight crew arrived to the country accordingly.
Say that I love Sri Lanka very much because I have been here 4 times. Sri Lanka amazed me very much because there are lots of greenery, friendly people, and lots of Sri Lanka is staying in my heart forever.
I want to tell thank you for so warm greetings, so beautiful dance. It was very pleasant for us. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. Really, I'm impressed of this dance. It's very, very beautiful, and these dresses, these costumes, it's very beautiful, really.
Meanwhile, another 29 COVID-19 patients were identified from Hangwella Medical Health Officers Division yesterday. Accordingly, a total of 437 COVID-19 patients have been identified from this area. Meanwhile, 2 COVID-19 patients have been identified from Tamankaduwa Medical Health Officers Division in Polonnaruwa. The close contacts of the patients have been directed to self-quarantine. Sri Lanka Insurance has distributed dry ration packs to more than 250 families who have been directed to quarantine in Slave Island and Vauxhall Street.
Now, taking a look at the global arena, the novel coronavirus has infected over 81 million people globally and has claimed nearly 1.8 million lives. Meanwhile, the new, more contagious variant of COVID-19, first identified in the UK, has now been confirmed in over 20 countries and territories around the world. India becomes the latest country to detect the new, more transmissible coronavirus variant. The variant, first identified in the United Kingdom, has also been detected in South Korea, Canada and across Europe. More than 50 countries have imposed travel restrictions on the United Kingdom in recent days to help prevent more spread. Indian health authorities have confirmed that 6 people who returned from Britain had tested positive with the new variant of the COVID-19 virus. With more than 10 million cases, India is the second worst affected by the virus after the United States. Nearly 150,000 people died in the world's second most populated nation. India has recorded 16,432 new cases of the virus today, a sharp drop from nearly 100,000 cases a day back in September. India suspended all flights from Britain until the end of the month, and the country is likely to extend the ban in an attempt to contain a new variant of the virus. However, around 33,000 passengers had flown in from late November before the ban came into effect. Meanwhile, Britain has reported 41,381 new COVID cases yesterday, the highest number since testing became widely available in the middle of 2020, as more COVID patients have been reported in hospitals at present than during the first wave of the pandemic in April. Accordingly, the British government has been called to bring in tighter lockdown rules to avert a fresh wave of deaths from a new strain of the disease. More than 71,000 people in Britain have died within 28 days of a positive test for the disease. Now, South Africa has announced tighter restrictions once again to combat the increase of coronavirus infections driven by a faster spreading new variant. Among other restrictions announced yesterday, indoor and outdoor gatherings will be banned and a curfew will be enforced accordingly. On Sunday, South Africa's health minister reported a grim milestone of 1 million infections, the highest figure on the continent. So far, the novel virus has killed more than 27,000 people in South Africa. Russia has confirmed that its coronavirus death toll is more than 3 times higher than previously reported. New figures have indicated that more than 186,000 Russians have died from the virus, from 55,265 the country officially reported. According to the new figures, Russia will have the third highest number of fatalities, moving ahead of India and sitting behind only the US and Brazil. Russia has reported more than 3 million infections since the beginning of the pandemic. South Korea announced a record of 40 deaths from COVID-19 today, as daily coronavirus cases have risen to more than 1,000 again, and the South Korean government has moved to procure more vaccines. The daily death toll, the highest since the country reported its first case of coronavirus in late January, came amid the third wave of infections that have forced the authorities to tighten social distancing measures. The country added 1,046 more cases, including 1,030 local infections, raising the total caseload to 58,725. Now, in the meantime, from the USA, the United States topped 19 million COVID-19 cases yesterday, as hospital intensive care units remained filled to overflowing across much of California, a major US coronavirus hotspot.
The United States has topped 19 million cases of COVID-19 as one of the country's worst hit states is set to extend its lockdown. Hospitals across the whole country have been strained to the brink all month, and California has been hit the hardest. Intensive care units in the state, now a major US hotspot, are full to overflowing. This past week, California has been averaging 230 COVID deaths a day. Governor Gavin Newsom said restrictions on gatherings and business activities would almost certainly be renewed for another 3 weeks, as he warned things are likely to get worse after the holiday season.
You need nothing more to example than the total number of passengers on airplanes nationwide that only suggests that we are going to see an increase in cases across this country, not just in the state of California, as it relates to these travel advisories that were not heeded clearly by everybody.
For now, California residents are under some of the toughest restrictions in the US. They're told to remain at home and avoid travel except for grocery shopping, medical appointments and daily exercise, while restaurants are limited to takeout and bars are closed altogether. The country as a whole has reported 333,000 deaths since the pandemic began, and as of Sunday, 118,000 people were in US hospitals with the disease.
Novavax said yesterday that it has started a late-stage study of its COVID-19 vaccine in the United States and Mexico.
Novavax has begun a large late-stage study of its COVID-19 vaccine trial in the United States, the drug developer said on Monday, after delaying the trial twice due to issues in scaling up the manufacturing process. It will enroll up to 30,000 volunteers across about 115 sites in the United States and Mexico, with 2/3 of them receiving the shot 21 days apart and the rest getting placebo. Novavax lags behind other drug makers in the global race for a COVID-19 vaccine, with shots from Pfizer and Moderna authorized for emergency use in the United States. Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca also have Phase 3 trials already underway in the U.S. Novavax, which is getting funding of up to $1.6 billion from Operation Warp Speed, is preparing to deliver 100 million doses to the United States early next year, if the vaccine is proven to be safe and effective in the trial.
Now back onto local stories. Head of Presidential Task Force for Economic Revival and Poverty Eradication, Basil Rajapaksa says that the Samurdhi managers and Samurdhi development officers will lead the process to direct Samurdhi beneficiaries towards livelihood opportunities under the program to uplift the rural economy. He made these remarks during a meeting with the Samurdhi managers held at Temple Trees yesterday. The discussion was held on Samurdhi household economy, microfinance, self-employment and business development. The government is expected to provide facilities to create 200,000 self-employment opportunities under agriculture, animal husbandry, fisheries, renewable energy generation and household economic industries. This year's budget has also directed attention in creating a market for the grassroots level innovations produced under the process. Accordingly, steps will be taken to initiate 25,000 new marketplaces. Head of the Presidential Task Force, Basil Rajapaksa, instructed the Samurdhi managers to direct more attention on suitable livelihood opportunities for the unemployed youth. He also instructed officials to work in collaboration with divisional development committees to empower the unemployed Samurdhi beneficiaries to become individuals with a strengthened economy. State Minister Shehan Semasinghe, Sita Arambepola and Ajit Newad Cabral were present at the occasion.
Sri Lanka University Clerical Staff Management Assistance and Technical Services Association has donated a sum of 1,280,000 rupees to the COVID-19 fund. The relevant donation was handed over to Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa today. Representatives of the Sri Lanka University Clerical Staff Management Assistance and Technical Services Association presented this donation at the official residence in Vijayarama in order to further strengthen the fund for the treatment of the COVID-19 patients in the country. The relevant donation was presented to Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa by the President of the Association, Dhammika Espiriantha. The new chairman of the Dompe Pradeshiya Sabha, Karya Perumage Piyasena, was sworn in before Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa today. The ceremony was held at the official residence in Vijayarama. The new chairman was appointed in order to fill the vacant post left by the former chairman Milan Jayatilaka after he was elected to the parliament in the recently concluded general election.
Now, the Vari Sabagya program set to construct 14,000 tanks across the country commenced from Uva province today. The ceremonies were held in Buttala Hirigalputta and Badravala Panangala tank premises. Accordingly, 12 selected tanks in Monaragala district will be developed under the Vari Sabagya Accelerated National Irrigation Development Program. The development proceedings of 7 tanks in the district commenced at the Buttala Hirigalputta tank premises today. It was commenced of the presence of Minister Chamal Rajapaksa, State Ministers Shashindra Rajapaksa and Anuradha Jayaratne. A total of 40 million rupees have been estimated for the entire project, out of which 15 million rupees have been allocated for the development of Buttala Hirigalputta tank. Accordingly, more than 100 families of the area will be able to utilize the water supply provided through the development project for agricultural purposes.
In the meantime, the handing over of the contract for the construction of 3,000 new housing units was carried out today. It was held at the Urban Development Authority premises in Battaramulla. The project to construct 3,000 housing units will be carried out by local construction companies. Accordingly, State Minister handed over the relevant contracts to the companies. The project is expected to be completed within a period of 1 year. Meanwhile, 200 people without land titles in Gampaha district received land deeds yesterday. The relevant ceremony was held at the Gampaha Urban Council Auditorium. Those who currently residing in lands belonging to Lands Reform Commission and those who are deprived of lands have been provided with the land deeds. Minister S.M. Chandrasena, State Minister Nalaka Godaheva and Chairman of Lands Reform Commission Attorney at Law Nilantha Vijayasinghe were present at this occasion.
Defence Secretary Kamal Gunaratne and Chief of Defence Staff and Sri Lanka Army Commander Shavendra Silva, who were elevated to the ranking of General, engaged in religious observances at the Temple of the Sacred Tooth Relic today. Chief of Defence Staff and Sri Lanka Army Commander General Shavindra Silva was welcomed by Deyawadana Nilame Pradeep Nilangadala upon his visit to the historic Sri Dalada Maligava Kandy. Army Commander General Shavindra Silva invoked blessings from Chief Prelate of the Askiriya chapter, Most Venerable Varaka Godeshri Jnana Ratanathera. Thereafter, the Army Commander invoked blessings from Deputy Chief Prelate of the Askiriya chapter, Venerable Venderue Upali Thera, and engaged in cordial discussions with the Thera at the Askiri Gedige temple. Defence Secretary General Kamal Gunaratne invoked blessings at the historic Sri Dalada Maligava as well. Subsequently, he engaged in cordial discussions with Deyawadana Nilame Pradeep Nilangadala. It is significant that both General Shavindra Silva and General Kamal Gunaratne, who were officers of the Gajaba Regiment of the Sri Lanka Army, were commanding officers of 2 battalions during the humanitarian operations carried out against terrorists, which concluded in the year 2019. While General Kamal Gunaratne carried duties as a commanding officer in Mumale battlefield, General Shavindra Silva was also a commanding officer, and both of them held the positions of Commanders-in-Chief of the Gajaba Regiment and Sri Lanka Army Special Force Regiment. These 2 officers commanded the 53rd and 58th Battalion fronts when the final battle field in Vellamuli Vaikal was pressured from several battle fronts. Defence Secretary Kamal Gunaratne retired as a Major General, while Shavindra Silva was promoted into the Lieutenant General rank on August 18, 2019 and appointed as the 23rd Army Commander of Sri Lanka. Subsequently, he was promoted to the Acting Chief of Staff post on January 2nd. Sri Lanka Army, under the leadership of the present Army Commander, initiated several projects with a new vision. General Shavindra Silva has rendered a significant service for the citizens of the country as the head of the National Operations Centre for the prevention of COVID-19 outbreak in the country.
And that's all the stories for tonight. We'll see you tomorrow at the very same time. Good night.
Good night.